Welcome to the press briefing today. Today's speakers are Dr. Albert Tao, Principal Medical and Health Officer of the Communicable Disease Branch of CHP, and Dr. Lau Kai-hin, Chief Manager of the HA. The doctors will tell us about the HA situation and the latest number of cases. Dr. Lau, please. Good afternoon. About the HA situation, currently there are 1,898 confirmed patients in hospital. Among them, 258 are additional patients. Among those in isolation facilities, 512 are in our isolation wards, 146 are in our second-tier wards, 608 patients are at the North Lantau Infection Control Center. Altogether, 206 are new patients. Yesterday, we newly reported 6 patients in critical condition, 6 serious patients. Among those inpatients, 36 are in critical conditions, 25 are in serious condition, 10 critical patients are in ICU. Concerning deaths, there are 8 new reports of deaths, including 7 males and 1 female, aged between 61 and 93. Among them, 7 among 8 were not fully vaccinated with 3 doses. And among the 7 diseased patients, 4 were unvaccinated at all, that is 0 dose. It shows the importance of vaccination against elderly serious disease and death. So once again, I call out to the public. I think many elderly people have got vaccinated. For those who are not, please do so promptly. If you have had 2 doses, please get the 3rd dose as soon as possible. According to research, only 3 doses will offer sufficient protection. Now I will go into details of each death. The first case is a 73-year-old male patient. Pardon me. Excuse me. 73-year-old male patient. He had 3 doses. He didn't have prior chronic illnesses. On the 31st of July, he tested positive on RAT. He didn't seek medical assistance on that day until the 13th of August. He fell at home and was rushed to the A&E of the Eastern Hospital. He told us that he approached the community testing center on the 31st of July and was tested positive on PCR. CT value was 14. After admission to hospital, his situation continued to worsen, mainly because of other problems. We were told that since his infection of COVID, his health was bad. He didn't have appetite and only ate very little. He coughed and had phlegm for 6 months. The situation persisted after infection. The admission check reviews shades after lung scan. After CT scan, we suspected him to be a lung cancer patient. It led to a number of problems because, for example, disrupted electrolysis and also high calcium level. So a PCR test was performed on admission. It came back negative. So in short, the PCR test was positive on the 31st of July. He had coughed and phlegm for 6 months, and he didn't seek medical assistance until he fell down at home on the 13th of August. In the interim, he didn't have appetite. He was rushed to the A&E, and after admission screening, he was found to have lung cancer. So the 2 PCR tests at hospital were both negative. We believe his death to be unrelated to COVID. The death was probably caused by the suspected lung cancer condition. Despite that, we think since the patient was 73 years of age, we hope that he could have sought medical assistance after infection because he was about 60 years of age. Even if he didn't have symptoms, he would be prescribed with oral antiviral drugs to prevent admission or the situation getting worse. Another deceased patient was a 93-year-old female patient with 2 jabs. On the 27th of July, she went to the A&E of the United Christian Hospital. The major complaint was confusion and incoherent speech, according to her family members. She had low blood sugar level as the A&E. Her family members said that on the 25th of July, she tested positive on RAT. She had cough and phlegm, and appetite began to worsen. And on the 27th, because of the confusion, she was brought to A&E. The doctor found that she had a number of chronic illnesses, including diabetes, hypertension, deteriorated renal function, asthma, and more seriously, breast cancer. She was receiving a palliative treatment. On admission, her PCR, her CT level was low, 14.3. Her situation deteriorated until she passed away on the 17th of August. Another deceased patient was a 87-year-old male. The previous patient, 93-year-old female, had 2 jabs. Now the 87-year-old male also had 2 jabs. He had a number of chronic illnesses, including hypertension, pneumoconiosis, and also anemia. On the 27th, he was rushed to the Tuen Mun A&E because he had fever, shortness of breath, and coughing the previous day. He was tested negative on RAT, but still he was received. His PCR result was CT 33 to 34, and the CT value continued to drop. It seems that it was the early onset of his COVID condition because he had experienced symptoms for a day. So he also had pneumoconiosis and other conditions. So despite prescription of oral antiviral drug and also remdesivir, he continued to worsen and pass away yesterday.
And then we had a 70-year-old male with 2 jabs. He had different health issues, high blood pressure, stroke, irregular heart rhythms, and he had also had cardiovascular blockage, so a heart issue, and also mild blockage of the pneumococcal problems, and also he had prostate cancer. And then he went to the A&E department on the 29th of July, telling us that he had a positive rat test, and then he didn't see a doctor with phlegm and coughing. On the 31st of July, he attended the A&E department with the test result done on the 29th of July. And then we carried out a PCR test for him, and it was found that the CT value reached 26. Upon admission, his conditions worsened, and in between, his conditions did improve for a while. And then he was sent to Taipo Hospital for recovery. Conditions worsened. Unfortunately, he passed away yesterday. And then another case involved a 90-year-old male. For this elderly man, he did not have any vaccination against COVID-19 at all. He suffered from Parkinson's disease. In August, on the 12th, he went to our hospital in Tin Shui Wai, attending the A&E department. His complaints were shortness of breath, fever, and coughing. He was admitted. A PCR was carried out. CT value was 21.4. We prescribed some antiviral medication for him orally. Unfortunately, another case involved an 88-year-old male. Again, he did not have any record of vaccination. He had high blood pressure, prostate enlargement, and also enlargement of his bronchiolitis, and then with a history of stroke, and also bleeding of the brain, and he also suffers from anemia. On August 8th, he attended the A&E department. His complaints were fever, coughing, and he felt very uncomfortable. On that particular day, he carried out a rat himself with a positive result. Upon admission, there was a PCR test. The CT value reached 17.2. I think he resided at a residential care home for the elderly. The care home had other residents who had their infection confirmed. Unfortunately, yesterday, this elderly man passed away. And then there was a 61-year-old male. For this patient, he suffered from diabetes, high blood pressure, hepatitis C, and then he had a lung cancer case as well, having spread to his bones as well as the liver, quite at an end stage. On the 13th of August, he attended the A&E Department of Children's Hospital with shortness of breath, with jaundice, as well as discomfort all throughout the body. At that time, at the A&E department, he was given a PCR test, and then the CT value was 17.3. Well, as a result of his end-stage status of the lung cancer, his conditions worsened, and yesterday passed away. And then finally, there was a case involving a 90-year-old male with no record of vaccination. The last case also had no record of vaccination at all. So for this 61-year-old man, or 90-year-old man, he had problems with his nerves, and it's a case of inflammation of his nerves, and he also suffers from gout. On the 22nd of July, he had a positive result of a rat test, but he didn't see any doctor. On the 30th of July, family members found him to be in a very poor shape. He complained about chest pain, so he was taken to the Prince of Wales Hospital. He attended the A&E department. At the time, a PCR test was carried out for him. the CT value was 22.7. Upon admission, we prescribed antiviral medication for him, including the ranitidine. But then, as a result of the health issues concerning the nerves and also of his because of his senior age, unfortunately, he passed away yesterday. Well, from the cases that I outlined, some of them had underlying diseases, chronic diseases. Some even had problems like cancer. About half of them, about 4 of them. Yes, in fact, 4 of them did not have a single dose of vaccination. Therefore, I would like to appeal to the public. Do make sure that you try your best to get vaccinated. For some citizens, they had a positive test result from RAT, but still they didn't see a doctor. Some of them got symptoms, but still they didn't see a doctor. Let me repeat my appeal to the citizens. If you have a positive result either from a RAT or a PCR, as long as you are above the age of 60, please see a doctor as soon as possible. This is particularly so if you have got symptoms. You need to see a doctor because the oral medication against COVID-19 will certainly help you. Even if you are below the age of 60, if you have got high risk factors, you need to see a doctor because you may need the medication against COVID-19 so as to ease the symptoms, and then your conditions won't worsen and you may not need to go to a hospital. Yesterday, 237 patients recovered, among whom 206 were discharged from our hospitals. And then 6 patients were found to suffer from COVID-19 upon admission screening or testing. 6 other patients in the same ward were regarded as close contacts. For our staff members, 86 more staff members were infected. And then 33 of our colleagues recovered and returned to their posts. Let me also report on one other issue. As I have said, for patients staying with our hospitals, we have reached the level of about 2,000. They're staying at our public hospitals. We can see that for those in serious conditions and those who have a critical condition, the number is increasing, though the rate isn't that very rapid, but then it is slowly increasing. Whether we are talking about newly infected patients or those who are inpatients, with such a number of inpatients, we are really worried. We are at a critical juncture. What worries us at this moment is that we are worried that the pandemic would worsen. I should know that for BA.4 and BA.5, we have more and more such cases, and they are more infectious. When the infection worsens, it means that the impact on the public healthcare system, as well as the impact on our patients, they would just aggravate. Therefore, we need to prepare for the worst in relation to the development of the infection, and yet we have to be best prepared. We need to be ready for the redeployment of beds. We need to be ready with members to admit more patients. For our public hospitals, we are having the second stage of our bed deployment. We need to go into the third stage. In other words, come next week, we are going to reopen the AWE Community Isolation and Treatment Facility. Initially, we will have 200 beds, and we have already got a plan for the redeployment of beds as well as manpower. So we can, within a short period of time, redeploy our staff to man the beds. The hospital authority will remain tactical, and depending on the needs, will be making adjustments to our service levels. If we are to enter the third stage, in other words, more non-emergency procedures will be affected. In particular, the elective procedures, as well as some day procedures. I hope patients would understand we need to cut down on such non-emergency procedures so as to spare the capacity to admit patients with a COVID-19 infection. Let me appeal to you once again, please do not take the matter lightly. If you haven't had any vaccination, please do so as soon as possible. Ramp up your protection of yourselves as well as those who are around you, so that in the case of an infection, whether you have symptoms, if you are above the age of 60, or if you have a high risk factor, even though you're below 60, please approach us as soon as possible for medical consultation. Either you come to our designated clinics or you can make use of our telemedicine service so as to reduce the number of cases of serious conditions, reduce the number of death cases, and ease the pressure on our healthcare system. I appreciate that for the past 2 years, you are getting very much tired of the pandemic. That is the fatigue. But I still call upon you to tie in with our strategies and measures. Otherwise, we cannot win the battle against the virus. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lau. Good afternoon. I now report the new cases recorded on the 18th of August. That is yesterday. Yesterday, locally infected cases amounted to 6,260. That is a new high in recent months. The 6,260 cases were locally infected, including 2,167 directly confirmed via PCR and 4,093 RAT positives and then confirmed with PCR test. And also yesterday, there were 185 imported cases, including 155 confirmed via PCR test and 30 RAT positive. Now, like Dr. Lau said, yesterday there were 8 new deaths. So far in the 5th wave, we have recorded 9,384 deaths among these patients. For those above age 60, they accounted for 96% of the deaths, among which 70% of them were people aged 60 or above with 0 vaccination. Among these cases, the mortality rate is 8.61%. For people above 60 with 3 doses of vaccination, the mortality rate would drop to 0.13%, a 66 times difference. So back to the imported cases. Yesterday, there were 185 imported cases. Among them, 73 were caught at the temporary sample collection center at the airport, and 36 were caught during the hotel quarantine period during day 1 to day 3. The remaining 76 cases were tested positive at the community testing center, including 55 cases caught between day 4 and day 7. The remaining 21 cases were caught after the 7th day. The city value of these samples were very high. Most of them are probably positive cases. In terms of source countries, there were 43 countries with 6 places having imported more than 10 cases, including the UK 25, India 19, the US 16, Philippines 14, Thailand 14, and Korea 11. The remaining 37 places have imported less than 10 cases. For care homes yesterday, there were 13 care homes reporting new infection, including 10 residential care homes for the elderly involving 26 residents and 7 staff members, and 3 care homes for people with disabilities involving 3 residents. Yesterday, there were a total of 202 residents classified as close contacts and required quarantine. The 13 care homes include Shanghai Jingguo Lianse Buddhist Li Ka-shing elderly care home in Wan Chai with 4 residents positive, and in Sham Shui Bo Fukwan elderly care home with 1 resident positive. In the Southern Districts, Tonghua Group Hospitals, Yuzhen Keng Memorial Care Home for the elderly, 2 staff positive. In North District, Gongha elderly care home, 2 residents positive. 幼稚芒 district 善宜福群 elderly care home with one resident infected. In 荃灣來來 elderly care home 荃威 with one resident infected. In 元朗愛德 elderly care home limited with one resident infected. 黃大仙新蒲崗elderly care home 3 residents positive. In 青怡清和居 elderly care home altogether 12 residents and 5 staff members positive. In 西貢Helping Hand Society 北上華father elderly care home 1 resident positive, and the 3 care homes for people with disabilities 1 residents each. In 觀塘Caritas 樂華Coastal. In 元朗海怡home for mentally disabled, and Sha Tin Hong Kong psychiatric mental health society care home. So in 青怡清和居 elderly care home altogether there were 12 cases. There are 110 residents and 63 staff members. As of this morning, 5 staff and 15 residents have tested positive. So the first case involved a carer tested positive on the 17th of August by RAT and onset on the same day. Yesterday, there was another carer tested positive on RAT onset yesterday as well. Plus 8 residents were tested positive on RAT yesterday. So we decided to evacuate the hostel, and with the 100 remaining residents classified as close contacts. Among the 100 residents, this morning, another 4 residents have tested positive on RAT. And also 3 other staff members, including 1 carer, 1 consultation follow-up carer, and another carer tested positive. So 10 residents have no symptoms. 8 residents had more than 2 doses. So 46 care homes have reported outbreak in the past 7 days, with residents classified as close contacts and require quarantine. The 45 care homes include 34 elderly care homes and 11 care homes for people with disabilities, including 73 residents and 21 staff members. We have observed that in the past 2 weeks, there were more care homes with infection and then other residents classified as close contacts. In the past 7 days, there were 45. In the past 14 days, there were 40. So compared with the previous 6 weeks, on average, each week, there were only 22 to 30 care homes reporting infection each week. As a result, we have observed an increase in the number of care homes with infection. Particularly, several days ago, we have recorded more major outbreaks in 2 residential care homes involving more than 10 people. And the earliest cases were staff members of the care homes. And then 1 or 2 days later, some residents became positive. It shows that these invisible transmission might be caused by staff members of care homes. Since the charge of these staff members are vulnerable people, including elderly people and people with chronic diseases. As a result, if staff members living in the community and the risk infection would increase, we urge staff members to conduct a RAT before going to work every day, and no matter how light your symptom is, you should stay away from work, even if you are RAT negative. Now, PCR tests are more sensitive and can identify cases more accurately and early. So I urge staff members for care home to conduct a PCR test regularly. Concerning schools, today we have received 69 cases reported by schools involving 54 students and 15 teaching staff. So the 69 cases are from 47 schools, including 38 kindergarten and childcare centers, 6 primary schools, and 3 secondary schools. In the past 7 days, for schools are reporting more than 2 cases, there were 10. 3 schools have classes with clusters. As a result, we have advised some classes to suspend teaching. First, in North District, as New Territories 婦孺福利會care home class NC with 23 students with some cases, and Taibo Ming Na International Kindergarten PCI BPM school 27 students with 3 cases. And first school 學資源 Kindergarten in Kowloon City. There are 2 classes with 2 cases. First, a PNA class, Group A, 15 students with 2 infected. Another class, PNE, also Group A, 14 students with 2 infected. We have advised the two classes to suspend in-person classes. In terms of subvariants, yesterday the Public Health Service Laboratory has performed some tests on the samples. The strain L452R believed to be BA.4.5. The percentage has risen to 29.3%. For L452, that is a BA.2.1.2.1 is risen to 8.6%. Thank you.
The floor is now open to questions. Please identify your media organization. The lady in the front. I'm from Cable TV News. If I may ask a question about the 88-year-old man who died with no record of vaccination, staying at a care home. You said that there were certain cases at that care home. Can you name that home? Was there a cluster in that care home? How many were infected? Have you identified the source of infection? And then for this particular wave, when are you going to expect a daily caseload of 10,000? The 3+4 arrangement has been in place for quite a period of time. And then we have seen more cases. So I just wondered if you have got statistics about the number of people with a amber code. Is it all because of the shortened quarantine period and so you have got more cases? For the 88-year-old man who passed away and who used to live at a care home, I haven't got anything to add unless Dr. Lau has anything to add. For the analysis of the pandemic, well, we can see that there has been a steady increase in the caseload. What worries us is that for the past few days, the number of cases has been increasing at a faster rate than before. In the past, we used to have about more or less the same level of caseload with an increase of 100 to 200. But then for the past few days, like since the 15th of August up to now, we are having a daily increase of over 1,000. 400, 500 more a day. This is worrying. Probably this is all because of the greater infectivity of BA.5. Well, among the prevailing variants, BA.5 is getting more and more dominant. We believe that this explains why the cases are increasing. And of course, we don't want the number of cases to increase too rapidly. But so far, the analysis is such that following such a trend, I'm afraid that the number of cases will go up to an even higher level within a short period of time. And then another question was about the amber code cases. Upon completion of quarantine at a hotel for 3 days, the traveler will get an amber code, and between the 4th and the 7th day, he or she will be subject to medical surveillance, and they have to put on a mask, and then with an amber code, they are not to be admitted to high-risk premises or places where they have to remove their mask. We believe that this will be effective to prevent a spread of the disease or a cluster developing. And then for the 4th day as well as the 6th day, they have to take a PCR test and they have to undergo RAT daily so that we can discover the infection as soon as possible. For the imported cases, well, they only account for 4% of the daily caseload. And in fact, the local infections are the main cause for the increase in the daily caseload. I haven't got information about the particular care home, but what we want to say is that we learned two things from this case. Well, for residents residing at care homes, there are still people who haven't had any vaccination. We have said that the vaccination rate is increasing. 90%, over 90% has their first vaccination, but there are still some elderly persons who haven't had any vaccination at all. It is worrying. Is it because the elderly people don't want to be jabbed, or is it their family members are worried, or they have a special reason that prevents them from doing so? For contraindications, that is, you have a health reason and so you cannot be vaccinated. There are very few such cases. Even if you are a cancer patient, even if you are on chemotherapy, you can still be vaccinated. So for those either residing in the community or residing at a care home, if you are an elderly person, really please go to receive your vaccination ASAP. As Dr. Au has said, for those who have been vaccinated, when compared with those who haven't been vaccinated, a three-jabbed person has a different picture from those who haven't had any vaccination at all. The difference is 66 times when it comes to death cases. So if you have a family member residing at a care home for the elderly and with no vaccination record at all, please start the vaccination as soon as possible. The more the better. At least they have some protection. Recently, we have seen many more outbreaks in the care homes. More care homes are involved and more elderly residents are involved. I think it is because of the increasing number of infections within the community. The care homes are staffed by citizens who reside in the community. They will move around in the community and they stand a chance of being infected. So as Dr. Au has said, it isn't just a matter for people residing at care homes. If you have symptoms, if you feel unwell, please conduct an RAT. When you have a positive result, of course, please submit the information and get treatment. Even if that's not the case, you can also get a vial so that you can check whether you have been infected. Because if we have a higher infection rate in the community, then it means that we cannot afford to overlook mild symptoms. If you allow that to happen, you are just allowing the infection to spread. As I have said, we need to join our hands. We have to make sure that we discharge our own duties, like make sure that you have good personal hygiene, make sure that you won't get infected. In the unfortunate case of getting infected, make sure that you don't allow the virus to be spread. So we need to work together before we can suppress the spread of the infection. Thank you. The lady on the right-hand side, I'm from Now TV. If I may ask this question, you have got almost 2,000 inpatients. I want to know about the percentage taken up by them vis-a-vis the number of beds available for COVID-19 patients. Now you're going to have 200 additional beds at the AWE facility. Who will be admitted to the AWE? Are we mainly talking about elderly patients or other age groups? And when do you expect the number of beds to be increased further? And how many more staff members would be needed to man the AWE facility? And then is it because some patients choose to delay the medical treatment, and so it explains why the infection is spreading? First of all, regarding the utilization rate, as I have said, currently we have 500 plus patients staying in isolation wards. Well, other than COVID-19 patients, we need isolation wards for patients suffering from other infectious diseases. Though the utilization rate is high, because there are other infectious disease patients. And then for our isolation beds, the utilization rate is, or the occupancy rate is approaching 60-70%. We can't allow it to go up to 100%. When it is 70% or 80%, we'll regard it as being fully occupied. We need to have some spare beds ready for admission, and after the patient has been discharged, we need to disinfect the beds. In other words, we are very tight, and that explains why we need to reopen the AWE facility. For the AWE facility, we don't mandate which group of patients will be admitted. But then, as I have said, 80% of the inpatients are elderly patients. So you can imagine that most of the time we see elderly patients being sent to the AWE facility because they need treatment. Some other elderly persons may be staying in the community, or they are admitted to other isolation facilities.
On manpower, in terms of doctors and nurses and allied health professionals, we have a plan of 100 such health carers. So all clusters have come up with a list of staff members for deployment to operate the treatment centers. Now, lastly, on delayed treatment, we saw a large number of cases with such cases. There were cases which have delayed for a few days or even 1 or 2 weeks. That is one of the reasons for the patient's condition turning worse. Now, actually, 60 years of age is not very old, but we are trying to offer protection to more people. So for COVID-19 patients aged 60 or above, once tested positive, please see a doctor where oral antiviral drugs are available. For example, designated clinics and certain private clinics where the drug is available. That would prevent the risk of hospitalization and severe illness. And then we can save our beds, and it would be good for our capacity so that we can take in needy patients. Next question, please. The lady at the back. Thank you, doctors. I'm Perming Parateli. Now, concerning reactivating the AWE, there will be 200 more beds. So where will the beds be housed? Which hall? Now, concerning the high occupancy rate of isolation ward, that is 60 to 70%. What about Tier 1 and Tier 2 beds occupancy rate in public hospitals? Now, for care homes, the Greenwood care home, there's quite a number of infections. So what is the cause? What about the distribution of cases? What about the vaccination rate for this care home? And among those infected residents, how many of them were fully vaccinated? Now, we are seeing an increase of cases in care homes. So what about the ratio of cases with severe illnesses? And what about the variants? Now, given the rising trend, because of the higher vaccination rates, do we see less severe illnesses among the residents? Now, concerning the Greenwood home, the first case was a carer, onset on the 17th of August, and tested RAT positive on the same day. That's the first case for the home. Yesterday, another staff member and abruptly 8 other residents were tested positive on RAT. So we believe that these residents were infected 2 or 3 days ago. Very likely it was the staff member who brought the virus into the care home, causing transmission. There is only one floor in the care home, and the rooms are not independent rooms, only partitioned. So the residents would roam around in the care home, and they might have taken their mask off. So the staff members have taken all the precaution, including mask and precautions during meals. Still, we urge staff members, despite testing negative on RAT, should stay away if they have symptoms, because Omicron is a highly transmissible variant. It may cause a transmission or even a major outbreak. So the vaccination rates of the home for 3 doses, the percentage is 60.7%. It's not very ideal. So some residents have not been fully vaccinated. As a result, after infection, they may need to be hospitalized. Fortunately, the 12 residents infected, among them, 10 have no symptoms. The other 2 only have mild symptoms. Concerning the AWE's 200 beds, they will be placed in Hall 8 and 10. So we will usually open 2 halls in pair. Concerning Tier 1 isolation beds, there are some 1,200 beds. Not all of them would be for treating COVID patients. Some patients with infectious disease have to be put on Tier 1 isolation beds. So altogether, including the 500 beds for COVID patients, the occupancy rate is some 60 to 70%. For Tier 2, there are some 600 beds available, but they won't be used up at the same time. So we need to transfer patients from a ward out before we can take in new patients. So we are prepared to gradually convert some beds into a Tier 2 isolation beds, because we are seeing a rising trend. Same applies to the AWE. We want to be able to open beds as soon as possible if there are more patients. Concerning the care homes, for critical or serious cases from care homes, I don't have the figures. We do have the figure, however, concerning serious patients or critical patients. Over 80% of them are elderly people. So if it is so unfortunate that an elderly person fell ill to COVID, then it would be very likely for them to turn serious or critical. Now, in hospitals, we do know the number of inpatients from care homes, but we don't have the percentage of critical or serious patients from care homes. Now, among the inpatients, some 10% are from care homes. Now, in this wave, the number is significantly lower than before. So compared with at the beginning and middle of the 5th wave, so care homes was the most risky area. So now the percentage is some 10%, I mean the inpatients from care homes. So every day the CHP would announce the number of care homes experiencing outbreak. So the number is on the rise, together with the number of patients from care home. So the hospitalization rate is high for these residents, because most of them are elderly people who are immobile, and some even have chronic illnesses. So vaccination rates for some is high, but for some, the patients might be unvaccinated at all. For example, today's death case. So if we can improve these figures, we can reduce the number of elderly people being hospitalized or even death, we have to protect them. Any other question? If not, then this is the end of the media briefing. Thank you very much.